Apple just got caught trying to buy chips from a company the United States literally banned. This isn't some startup bending the rules in the shadows. It's Apple, the company that built its entire brand around strict compliance and following the law to the letter. And that's what makes this story so incredible. The company we've watched sue competitors over the tiniest patent violations is now apparently shopping for microprocessors from a Chinese manufacturer that's been on America's official trade blacklist for years. This report broke just yesterday, and it reveals something absolutely massive about how the tech industry actually works behind the glossy PR statements. It's way messier than the public image suggests. So what's really going on here? Why would Apple, a company obsessed with its corporate image and investor confidence, risk such a bold move? Here's the twist nobody expected. It's all about one fundamental supply chain problem. Apple can't get the advanced chips it needs fast enough from approved suppliers, and the waitlist keeps stretching longer. That desperate supply chain crunch is forcing one of the world's most careful companies to consider doing something it's never publicly considered before. And that brings us to the real question: what happens next? To understand why this is such a huge deal, you need to know how the United States blacklist actually works. The United States government maintains a trade restriction list called the Entity List. It's basically an official do-not-do business with register for companies the government considers a national security threat. When a company gets put on that list, American businesses are supposed to cut off all sales and partnerships immediately. No exceptions, no gray area. This particular Chinese manufacturer, which Engadget reports is the company in question, ended up on the blacklist because the United States government believes its technology could be used to strengthen China's military or surveillance capabilities. It's not about fair competition or business ethics. It's pure geopolitics. The United States wants to slow down China's technological advancement, so it weaponizes trade restrictions. Dozens of Chinese tech companies are on that list right now. The consequences are severe: violate the blacklist, and a company faces federal penalties, public scandal, and potential criminal charges against executives. That's why most American tech companies treat the Entity List like a minefield. You simply don't go near those companies, except Apple apparently just did. So why would Apple take this risk? The answer lies in the global semiconductor supply chain, and right now that chain is broken in ways most people don't realize. Here's the situation. The world makes most advanced chips in a handful of factories, and all of them are backlogged. Taiwan's TSMC, Samsung in South Korea, Intel in the United States, they're all running at maximum capacity, and their wait times for new orders can stretch beyond a year. Meanwhile, Apple designs new iPhones every September, and those devices need millions of custom chips manufactured months in advance. When your supplier says, "We can deliver in 15 months, and you need chips in 9 months, you've got a problem. A massive problem." Apple's solution used to be simple: throw money at the problem, secure a spot at the front of the queue. But money doesn't buy you time when factories are literally booked solid. That's when your options start getting darker. A blacklisted Chinese manufacturer might be able to deliver custom chips in 6 months instead of 15. They are less booked. They're more desperate for business. And suddenly, the risk versus reward calculation changes. Delay a product launch and lose market share to Samsung and Google, or take a calculated bet on sourcing from someone the government says you shouldn't touch. Here's where it gets concrete. We're not talking about tiny components buried inside your phone. We're talking about the chips that power everything Apple makes. Every iPhone, iPad, Mac, Apple Watch, AirPod, and HomePod relies on custom silicon. Apple doesn't buy generic chips from random suppliers anymore. They design their own chips: the A series for iPhones, the M series for Macs, the neural engines that power machine learning on devices. These aren't commodity parts. They're the competitive advantage Apple bakes into every product. If a Chinese manufacturer can make custom silicon as good as Apple's current suppliers, that manufacturer becomes incredibly valuable and incredibly dangerous from a national security perspective. Think about it this way: Apple ships roughly 240 million devices per year. If even a fraction of those contain chips from a blacklisted company, the geopolitical fallout is enormous. The United States government would view it as Apple helping China's tech sector. The manufacturing precision required to make these chips is world-class too. You can't just throw together a chip plant and expect to build something good enough for Apple. This manufacturer must have serious expertise, which means the United States government's concerns about strengthening Chinese capabilities aren't theoretical. They are based on real technical capability. Here's the uncomfortable truth. Apple probably isn't the only American company considering this. Every major tech manufacturer faces the exact same supply chain crisis. But Apple is different in one crucial way. Apple's brand is built on being ethical and compliant. Microsoft, Google, Amazon, they've all had messy supply chain incidents, and the public forgave them. Apple's brand doesn't have that buffer. One leaked report about blacklist violations could trigger boycott movements, shareholder lawsuits, and congressional hearings. That's why this story is so significant. If Apple got caught, other companies were probably thinking about it too. Samsung makes many of its own chips, so they have slightly more flexibility. But companies like Qualcomm, which designs phone processors, are in the same boat as Apple. Intel, which manufactures for other brands, is desperate to fill its fabs. None of them have great options. The difference is, Apple is the lightning rod, the brand everyone watches, the company that gets called out first. In a weird way, Apple is absorbing the reputational risk that other companies are quietly taking. If the United States government decides to ignore this or quietly let it slide, other tech companies will take that as permission. If the government makes an example of Apple, it sends a message to everyone else that the blacklist actually means something. Here's what makes this situation so explosive. We are in the middle of an escalating tech Cold War between the United States and China. The Biden administration imposed strict restrictions on selling advanced chips to China. The goal was to slow down China's AI development and military technology. But those restrictions created a backlog that's now forcing American companies to look at alternatives. If Apple buys from a blacklisted Chinese company, the Trump administration or any future administration could use that as evidence that trade restrictions don't work. The response could be massive: additional restrictions, new penalties, forced divestment from China, or the government could quietly ignore it, which sends the message that rules don't actually apply to powerful companies. Both outcomes are bad. You've got a situation where genuine national security concerns collide with economic reality. Congress holds hearings on AI chip access and export controls. The Commerce Department investigates. Executives potentially face criminal charges. And meanwhile, shareholders want products on time and competitors aren't sitting still. This isn't just business drama. It's the real-world cost of trying to control global technology through trade restrictions when supply chains are genuinely broken. Apple didn't create this problem, but this report shows how bad the underlying crisis has become. When rule-following companies start considering rule-breaking, the system is in trouble. Let's step back and understand why supply chains are such a nightmare right now. A modern semiconductor is made from hundreds of specialized inputs. The silicon wafer comes from one supplier. The rare earth elements come from a different supplier. The photolithography machines come from a Netherlands company called ASML. There's literally only one company on Earth that makes them. When COVID hit, every single link in that chain broke simultaneously. Factories closed. Container ships stopped moving. Logistics networks collapsed. Recovery wasn't linear. It was a slow, stuttering process of different suppliers coming back online at different speeds. A car factory could get its engine parts back faster than its chip supplies. That created backlog. Meanwhile, chip demand exploded because everyone working from home suddenly needed laptops and tablets. Demand surged while supply was broken. Fast forward to 2026 and the mess is still happening. TSMC invested billions in new factories, but building a fab takes 3 to 5 years. Samsung did the same. Intel tried to catch up, but the demand from AI training, data centers, and new consumer devices keeps accelerating. So you've got a situation where no supplier can meet peak demand. Everyone's rationing. Everyone's got waitlists. And when you're at the back of the line, you start looking for alternatives. That's where blacklisted suppliers become tempting. So here's what this Apple story really means and why you should care. The semiconductor supply chain is so broken that even the most careful, rule-following company on Earth is considering breaking federal trade restrictions. That's your signal that we are in uncharted territory. The government's approach to controlling technology through trade restrictions is hitting a hard ceiling. Companies can't magically make chips appear faster than physics allows. If the government keeps restrictions tight while supply stays broken, companies will keep looking at darker solutions. Apple's allegedly being caught is the first domino. Whether it actually bought the chips or just inquired doesn't matter much. The fact that this report exists means other companies are definitely exploring the same options. What matters now is how the government responds. Do they make an example? Do they quietly allow it? Do they accelerate domestic chip manufacturing to solve the underlying crisis? The answer determines whether blacklists remain enforceable tools or become theater that nobody respects. For Apple specifically, this is a credibility crisis waiting to happen. For the broader tech industry, it's a wake-up call that global supply chains need redundancy and resilience, not just efficiency. And for you watching, this explains why your next phone might cost more, arrive later, or have features you don't recognize. The invisible infrastructure is stressed, and Apple's decision to shop for blacklisted chips is proof.